the Olympics
it's amazing,
are over.
And I have experienced this a number of times. The Olympics are all-encompassing for 2 weeks.
Yep.
But when they end, boom, they end.
Right. I mean, it's like
there's really no aftermath. There's no post game on the
no,
Olympics.
no. I mean, they turn the flame off and you're done.
It really is.
Thanks for playing. You're done.
Yeah. It's amazing, and of course, I remember the time back in 1980. In Lake Placid, when they had the Miracle on Ice and the United States won the gold medal in hockey, there was a great post-Olympic celebration because the hockey team won the gold medal on the last day. The hockey competition always basically ends competition at the Winter Olympic Games. So there was a spillover, and there was just great elation after they won it. And it continued a week after. I think they flew to Washington, and they went to the White House and things like that. But since then, there really has never been a post-Olympic gathering, whether it's summer or winter. It ends, as you say. The flame goes out, and the order says to go out, and 4 years from now, gather in Beijing. And that's the next time that you really hear about it.
Yeah, send us your best and your brightest, your athletes 4 years from now in, as you say, in Beijing, or 2 years from now in Tokyo for the summer games. So now we've been all caught up on the Olympics. Now it's amazing. It's the last day of February. And now in the NFL, we always talk about, there are little just check marks and there are benchmarks in the course of an offseason. We're there now. Combine is underway. Hugh Jackson, the head coach of the Browns, spoke today. And now it's from now until next Wednesday, for the next week. I mean, they are embedded in Indianapolis looking at all these players, especially quarterbacks.
Yeah, they are. And, that's what it's all about for them. And they need two of them.
Yep.
They need two of, and they need the different variety of quarterback. They need the young quarterback who they look down the road, and I don't know how far that road is before they put the young quarterback in and say the franchise is now yours. And they need the guy who's going to hold serve for them and get the franchise to the point where he can hand the franchise over to the young quarterback. And that's where they are right now. So they need one of each kind. I think they're going to take a guy at number one.
I do too.
I think they're really kind of locked in on a quarterback at number one. And then whatever happens at 4 happens. There are a couple of different ways they can go. And then there's the veteran quarterback, the quote veteran quarterback. And they're, how do they fit into that market? And that's going to be very interesting on two fronts. Number one, they have more money than anybody, okay? And so they can compete with anybody, and they can outbid anybody to get a quarterback. But quarterbacks are smart right now, and they're saying, hey, listen, we feel you're going to take a quarterback at number one, and we're just going to be keeping the seat warm here for a year, maybe 2 at the most, before you would take me out of the lineup and hand the team over to the young guy that you take at number one. Perfectly understandable, but not for me. Right? I want to go to a team, and I want it to be my team. And all of these guys are looking at it long term, I think. I think that's what they're looking at. So that's going to be their tough pitch in about a week and a half. But for now, it's the young quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sell job. You've got to make, we all think A.J. McCarron is probably going to be the guy that's most
amenable.
Because, look, Kirk Cousins is at the top of the list, but I don't think the Browns are going to get him in terms of the free agent. But I do think, A.J. McCarron would be the most amenable to that kind of a scenario that you just put out, to being sold, hey, look, it's your team, go out and win us games, but we're investing also in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. Here's the deal, I think. You touch upon Kirk Cousins, and he's the most talked about of the free agent class, okay? Talk about a guy that really is being puffed up, but hasn't really delivered. Tony Grossi has a great stat on Cousins.
Yes.
His record against winning teams with winning records, 4-19.
Ooh.
Now this,
really?
Now that's been his team, the Redskins.
Yeah.
I know he's been hit with the tag a couple of times in Washington. So I don't know what his temperament is as far as his contractual situation. But, he was always paid at the top of the ladder every year, albeit it's a one-year deal because he's on the tag. But, 4-19, and suddenly you're going to now throw the world of money at him and make him probably the highest-paid player in the NFL, at least for the day that he signs that contract. And he's 4-19 against winning teams. Now, come on.
I think he started one playoff game, I think.
And he was terrible in the game.
Right.
You know, and it was a home game.
Right.
You know, it was a home game, and it was Seattle they played, I think, and they got, you know, they got handled. You know, he's quite a story. I mean, remember there was RG3 that they picked, and then later in that draft they took Cousins.
Right.
And then he eventually, because of all the injuries and poor play and you know, kind of rough edges between RG3 and the coaching staff there, the Shanahans in Washington, Kirk Cousins kind of won out and got in there. He got hot at one point and took them to a division title, but since then, it just hasn't happened.
Right. I mean, good. I mean, if you're a fantasy football owner, the numbers are pretty good. But if you're always 8-8, as Jay Gruden said, you know,
special. They would say good quarterback, special quarterback. I don't know if I see a special quarterback. He's at the top of the list, though, and you're probably right. I mean, you're probably right that he can take a look at a situation like Minnesota, Denver. Those seem to be the two at the top of the list. I mean, I don't know if anybody, if he takes a look at the Jets.
Right. I mean, were you surprised that Jacksonville gave Blake Bortles that big of a contract in the last week since we've done one of these? And basically now they've said, hey, look, we've got our guy. I mean, and Bortles is it.
I was surprised. I really was. I think that they saw some elevation in his play, and I would agree with that. He was marvelous against the Steelers. And for 3 quarters, he was really good against the Patriots. Yeah. But in the 4th quarter, he reverted back to Blake Bortles of old, and when really Jacksonville was going, what are we going to do with this guy? But, yeah, you know, I think that there's enough there, Dino, and Tom Coughlin, who's running the show there, really seems to be that kind of a guy that, hey, listen, you know, let's not do anything dramatic here. We're good enough that if he continues to be on an elevation to play as well as he did at the end of the year for Jacksonville, where they were a very good team, then let's ride with him.
Right.
I think maybe anybody else in the front office, I would think they might not have done that move. But I think that the head coach, Doug Marrone, and Tom Coughlin are so in sync with what they want to do. And I really think the main guy they have is Leonard Fournette to run the ball and a great defense, that they're going to live with Bortles and hope that he continues on a staircase that's going to have him playing better and better.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have enough pieces around him that, you know, they should feel good.
Yeah,
they should feel good.
Maybe he can't be the everything quarterback that the position kind of dictates in the NFL today, but maybe he can just be a functional quarterback for them. And he doesn't get you beat. Now, he has gotten them beat a lot of times, but in the end here, this season, he didn't get them beat a lot, and they really do have a great defense, and they've got enough around him offensively that they can, if he's having a little bit of an off day, they can survive. But still there is that point where he's going to have to win them some games.
Yeah, I mean, it's as we always talk about when you look at teams that win the Super Bowl, generally speaking, you got to have an elite level quarterback. I mean, the Brad Johnsons, Trent Dilfers, and Jeff Hostetler's aside, I mean, those are also very good defenses or very good running games. I mean, you got to have the quarterback.
Yeah, and getting back to A.J. McCarron that you brought up, and we strayed to Cousins, but McCarron seems to be within the marketplace of where the Browns are. Again, they have a ton of money. But I don't think you have to pay him a ton of money, nor should you. Now, he's only played in 11 games. He's only started 3 games. Okay, he has started 3 games. But the outline that Hugh Jackson laid out today, when people said, you know, how do you commit to McCarron? And he's only played that, you know, infrequently in his career in the NFL, playing behind Andy Dalton. And then Hugh said, well, you know, you have to look at who he's played for. Well, he played for Hugh.
Right, exactly right.
So that would tell me. The other thing is, I don't know if McCarron, with his lack of body of work as a starter in the NFL, can say to a team, well, wait a minute, I want this to be my team. I still think he's in the prove-it mode.
Right.
And I think that fits into what the Browns are looking at.
And the best thing is you don't have to part with draft picks to get him. Like, you know, they would, again, I mean, the price that would have taken to trade for him back in November was pretty steep.
It was a second and a third.
Yeah. You know, you don't have to worry about that now. Now you're just dealing with an agent. So more from Hugh Jackson today. He also said, hey, look, you know, it is my goal to not have to play a rookie quarterback. You know, I don't want to have to do that again. You know, I think the Kaiser experience. Hey, look, I don't want to do that again, which is why I'm with you. I think they're going to get a veteran. But when you listen to Hugh Jackson, and then you and I were talking before we went on the air, folks. If you listen to sports talk radio, or you go online and you listen to podcasts or whatever, every discussion in the NFL right now is about the Cleveland Browns, and it's going to be like that from now until draft night. You know, what are the Browns going to do at 1-4? Or as Dan Patrick said,
how can the Browns screw
it up? There's a lot of pressure on Hugh Jackson, because he is he won the power struggle with Sashi Brown. He's also the quarterback guy.
Right.
You know, he was hired to be the quarterback guy. There's pressure on John Dorsey though as well. And you know, they say so. We haven't heard from Dorsey yet at the combine. We heard from Hugh. Hugh said all the right things about his working relationship with Dorsey. Mm-hmm. One hopes it comes to fruition like that.
Well, it has to for Hugh to remain.
Yeah.
I mean, it really does. I mean, aside from the obvious factor, he's got to win some games.
Right.
The other factor is it has to work. You can't have this bickering that seems to be incessant there, where they say, "Hey, there's a fracture between the front office and the coaching staff." You know, that has to go.
Yep.
I mean, that has to get out of there. They have to open up the front doors there on 76 Lou Groza Boulevard, and they got to flush that out, because it's going to be hard enough beating the 16 teams they're going to line up against, or the 16 games that they're going to line up against their opponents each and every Sunday. So to have in-house quibbling, it's non-productive, and it becomes just such a wedge in everything you're trying to do. So I think that, yes, there is pressure on him, but I think he's a smart guy and he understands. He's been given a reprieve in a town and with an organization that has had coaches flying out of a turnstile kind of situation out the front door. They're a revolving door, and Hugh's been allowed to stay through 2 very bad years, 1-15 and 0-16. So it behooves him that this thing works.
Yep.
And it really, there is a lot of pressure on John Dorsey, though, because not only you would say, well, there's not a lot of pressure on him because they're 0-16, but never has a front office guy inherited the wealth of picks and the amount of salary cap room in the same year, Dino, that this guy has.
I mean, again, number 1 and number 4 in the first round, 3 second-round picks. I mean, you really can, if you draft appropriately, if you make the right moves, you can really get 4, potentially 5 starters, maybe a couple of guys that are all-pro type of players that are, team with a Myles Garrett to become, your cornerstones of the future. And these are the guys that we're going to ride with for the next 5 to 10 years.
Right, exactly. And that's what you hope for. There was an interesting quote that came out of Indianapolis today, and it was attributed to Hugh, and it was, "Are you tired of the practice of trading down?"
Yeah.
And he said, absolutely. Now, he then kind of couched it a little bit a couple of minutes later when he said, now listen, I mean, if it's the right fit, then you make a trade. But, those trades down, they drive me crazy. Where they are positioned right now, I mean, they're in great spots, as you said, to pick not only a quality player, but a really great player where they are just in the first 2 rounds.
Right. If you think about it like this, let's assume that the Giants are going to also take a quarterback. Let's just say, for argument's sake, the Browns are going to take a quarterback with the first overall pick, either Allen, Darnold, Rosen, or Baker Mayfield, whoever. So let's say the Giants take their quarterback at 2. That automatically means, at the very least, either Barkley, the running back, or Fitzpatrick, the defensive back. One of those 2 guys would be there at 4. And, I mean, those guys, Jimmy, would be, a number 1 on, in almost any other year that didn't have this many quarterbacks.
I mean, there are I don't think it's one draft expert or scout, but there are many of them saying that Saquon Barkley is the best player in the draft, the running back out of Penn State. So, I mean, that could be a decision that's right out there in front of them. Very, very easily could be a decision that's right there out in front of them. Are we going to help our defense where they, have needs, especially on the corner? Or are we going to get a running back that's going to take some of the burden off of whoever our quarterback is going to be and become a really exciting player in the offense, because Barkley can do so much. He's not just a runner, he's a receiver, he's a returner. If you want to have him do that, if you pick him that high, that's probably too much of a precious commodity to put him out there returning kicks. But yeah, you're going to have that decision. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And it's why trade down?
Why trade down?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the whole thing last year at 12. You could have taken Watson, you could have taken Hooker, you could have taken
the tight end out of Alabama.
O.J. Howard.
Yeah,
I mean, why trade down if you've got the player? And I know the Browns have the number 4 overall pick because they traded down. Tip of the cap to Sashi Brown, but you don't have to trade down anymore. In fact, I mean, Jimmy, if they packaged 2 2s to move back into the first round this year, I'd be fine with that if they wanted to do that and get another elite player, get the best wide receiver or the best defensive player. I mean, speaking of wide receivers, I mean, Hugh Jackson was asked and talked a lot about Josh Gordon today.
Oh, I think
this isn't a chemistry experiment anymore.
No.
I mean, they really, no matter how his contract is going to work itself out. I mean, he's the property of the Browns, but I mean, they really are all in on Josh when you listen to Hugh.
Yeah, and I think to the point where it will keep them away from a certain level of wide receiver, whether it be in free agency or in the draft.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that they will add a receiver, and maybe it will become in free agency, but I don't think it would be of the high level. I think it would be more of the possession receiver, that kind of guy that is going to be able to play alongside Josh Gordon. But there's no doubt in any kind of dialogue that you hear coming out of Berea that they just marvel at him and see the possibility with him and feel that he is on the right road now, that he has been off the NFL landscape for so long that for him to be able to get it back and be back in the league, that finally he gets it as far as his character is concerned, and he realizes, hey, it's time to play, play up to my ability, and then down the road in a year and a half, I'll get paid up to my ability. I mean, this guy has left so much money on the table. It's sad, really.
But that was the amazing thing. If I think about it, there wasn't much to look back on 2017 and say, wow, that was great. But the fact that Josh Gordon can still play at a high level, I mean, I didn't know what to expect when we saw him. And, you came back after the first practice, you were sitting there like, it's not even close. I mean, it's not even close.
It's unbelievable. It's just you're just watching somebody go out and do whatever he wants to do. Okay, it's like LeBron. LeBron can do whatever he wants to do, right? I mean, and this guy goes out. He can do whatever he wants to do. He can make a short throw into a long play. He can make the long great catch.
Right.
He can get up in the air. I mean, he can go to the ground and make a catch. But I think that they really are all in on him to the point where they say, listen, we've got our guy.
Yeah.
Now we're going to put some people around the guy.
Yep.
The guy I would be worried about right now is Corey Coleman.
I was going to ask you, do you think there's a shot that they may just cut him loose between now and?
I don't know if cut him loose.
I think they'd rather trade him. I mean, if they could.
Well, yeah. I think they're. Has he lived up to the the first round selection? No. And remember, they moved there in that draft.
Right, exactly.
And seemed to be very comfortable. They skipped up to the podium that night to hand in the card to get him. So I think that right now I think they're very underwhelmed by him. That drop in Pittsburgh on the fourth down play, that said it all. That said it all.
It's the drop, and then we talked about this sometimes with Indians players. I think with like Danny Salazar, there are just some players professionally that just for whatever reason they can't stay healthy. And Corey Coleman seems like a guy.
Oh, yeah.
No offense, he just can't. He can't stay healthy, and if you can't play, you can't play. You can't help me.
Right. Well, there seem to be 2 stages in his season every year. There's training camp, and typically there's an early injury.
Yep.
Okay, and he misses most of training camp, doesn't play in the preseason, and then he starts the regular season because you want him out there.
Exactly.
Okay, but he hasn't done much in training camp because they've been very sensitive to the fact that, hey, we want to have him for the regular season. So he goes out and he underwhelms you at the beginning of the year. And then he might give you a game where he gives you 5 catches and he's up at 100 yards, okay? And you go, okay, here he goes. And then there's that second injury. And then there are the 8 games he misses there.
Right.
And
then
he comes back for 2 weeks or he's not back at all.
Right.
That's hard to live with.
Yeah. Not for a team that's trying to figure out how we're going to win and identify the guys that are going to be a part of this thing when this turnaround happens. Last thing from the Combine, and I remember this from the Manziel time 4 years. you believe it's been 4 years since Manziel was going to be drafted?
No.
I can't either.
Yeah.
But I remember going through this then. Sam Darnold, the quarterback from USC, he's not going to throw this weekend at the Combine or early next week whenever he's going to be out on the field. I always remember that never being a big issue before when the Browns were looking at quarterbacks. And I don't necessarily think it's a big issue now, but it puts more emphasis on the pro day, which is what these agents of these quarterbacks want. When it's more controlled, you throw on your home field, you throw to guys that you're used to throwing to, and it's a more comfortable atmosphere for your guy to show himself.
Here's the thing about Darnold, though, and this is not a problem. I don't think that this shouldn't be a red flag. He's going to go in. The interview this week that he does, that's going to be the most important thing for him. I think what's going on with him right now is I think he's working on his delivery. I think that they have detected, and he's working with Carson Palmer's brother.
I saw that, yeah.
He's working with Carson Palmer's brother. And I think if you probably heard it if you followed his year last year, because there were times where he was prone to turning the ball over, and people would say there's a loop in his delivery. There's a little bit of a loop in his delivery, and I think he is trying to get that out. So I think that this is a mechanical breakdown. It's like a golfer redoing his swing. And I think by March 21st, which I think is his pro day out at Southern Cal, I think the loop is going to be out, okay? And it will be a remade throwing motion with Sam Darnold, and so I think that's why he's doing it. I think that's the big reason.
Did Tim Couch do that with Chris Palmer?
Tim Couch
around that time.
Yes, I remember it very, very well. They went to the Combine, and Tim did not throw at the Combine.
Right.
Okay. So they went down to Lexington, Kentucky, and the Browns went down there and they worked him out. And they didn't like the workout.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And so they were out at the auto show here in Cleveland. And we were out there with them. And Chris Palmer is sitting there, and Couch was autographing footballs. Okay. And Palmer said, "Hey, can I ask you, how do you grip the football?" And so he showed Palmer. I was sitting right there. He showed Palmer. I'm lefty. Couch was righty. He showed Palmer his grip, and he went, "That's the wrong grip."
Wow.
And they taught him a new grip.
That's right.
To the point where they said, "We want to come down on our own time."
Right.
And they all got back on Al Lerner's jet, and they flew back down to Lexington because they were very unsure about whether or not they were going to take him. Then you were into the Achilles Smith, Dante Culpepper, Donovan McNabb, or take Ricky Williams.
Right.
Okay. So anyway, they go down for the second workout down in Kentucky, and they're more comfortable with what they saw. Plus, the Browns figured out they orchestrated the workout, the second one.
Right.
Couch's, people did the first one down in Kentucky, which was for everybody. But when the Browns went down, they said, "All right, this is the one we want to do."
Right.
And so they were more comfortable, and he changed the grip, and then they made the pick. That's how they did it.
So when you hear, the moral of the story is as more stuff comes out of the Combine and you hear about Sam Darnold not throwing, just keep that story in mind and saying, hey, look, they want to tinker with his delivery.
I think that's what's going on.
And get him to the point where by the pro day in mid-March, he's more of a finished product.
Now, the most drastic example of that was Tim Tebow.
Yes.
Do you remember? I mean, everybody, in fact, they did a documentary with him, and they tried to change his throwing motion. It was never obviously accomplished to the point where he can make a living as a quarterback in the NFL. But remember, they did that. They completely tried to change his delivery from the way he threw the football, which was very strange. I mean, how he threw the ball. So they do it. I mean, that's what happens sometimes is that these quarterbacks, nobody works on their mechanics more than Tom Brady.
Right.
Every year, Tom Brady breaks down his mechanics, has a guru that he goes to, that they work on his mechanics every year. I mean, that's what it's all about for a quarterback.
Right. And in his 40s, he's still elite level. It's crazy. Hopefully the Browns will find an elite level quarterback this year.
Mechanically sound.
Yes, mechanically sound in the draft and in free agency.
Because let me tell you, they said Kaiser his mechanics would fall apart in games. And that I'm sure that's something that Deshaun's working on in the offseason. Incidentally, you didn't hear his name at all today.
No, and we've talked
that.
About
Might be a good thing for him. That might be a good thing for him.
Take some of the pressure off of him. All right, that will do it for us. Jimmy, as always, thank you so much.
It was good to be back.
Yes, it was good to be back. We'll see everybody back here tomorrow night for another edition of the Donovan Live postgame show right here on WKYC's Facebook Live.